Subcompact crossovers have been around for quite some time, but when the Kia Seltos arrived on the scene, this was the beginning of the second wave of affordable crossovers. Vehicles that were not going to be as large as a compact like a Kia Sportage or Toyota RAV4, but not as compact as a Subaru Crosstrek or even a Mazda CX-3, the old Toyota CHR and Honda HR-V. Vehicles have gotten larger over the past few years, and the Kia Seltos was one of those initial crossovers in the early 2020s that changed the game in this market. And in today's video, we're going to check out what the 2026 Kia Seltos EX has to offer us. We're going to check out the exterior, the interior, take it out for a quick test drive, and see why, if you're looking at buying an affordable subcompact crossover right now, maybe taking a look at the Kia Seltos might be a great decision. Now, before we get in this video, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to Gervais Kia here in Lowell, Massachusetts for letting me come down here to check out the Kia Seltos. Their link will be in the description below, so you can check out their extensive Kia inventory. So as always, let's begin with that pricing. For the 2026 Kia Seltos EX we have today, you're looking at a starting cost of just under $26,500. But that's with front-wheel drive. If you're going to go with all-wheel drive, that will tack on $2,200 to that price tag. So better year-on capability and versatility, but it does come at a significant cost, but you're still spending below 30 grand, which is great to see, because with that Volkswagen Taos we had recently featured, that came in at around $28,000 with all-wheel drive, and that was a base trim. So with the Seltos, this is a near top trim for 2026, so really great to see. Also with the all-wheel drive system, that will be paired with 7.3 inches of ground clearance, which should be more than enough to take on snow-covered roadways and maybe even some light off-roading if you do plan on going camping or skiing and snowboarding during the winter. Now, as we transition to that performance, you're looking at a 2-liter naturally aspirated 4-cylinder engine producing 147 horsepower and 132 pound-feet of torque. It is going to be paired with Hyundai Kia's IVT, also known as a CVT from most manufacturers. Now, this is not going to be a fun crossover by any stretch of the imagination when it comes to the on-road driving experience. We'll talk about that later on during the test drive. However, with a crossover like this, it's going to boil down to its affordability and, most importantly, that efficiency. By going with the Kia Seltos EX, you're going to have right around 27 miles per gallon in the city and 31 miles per gallon on the highway, which is pretty good for a vehicle in this market, especially for those city numbers. So if you're looking for an efficient daily driver that's also decently sized, the Kia Seltos is going to be a great choice in that regard. Now, speaking of size for the Kia Seltos, that leads me into the practicality here for this model. The Kia Seltos is going to be one of the larger offerings in this market, and the cargo area is going to reflect that. So by going with the EX, you are going to receive a power liftgate. Remember, this is a vehicle coming in at around $28,000, and with that Volkswagen Taos, you did not receive a power liftgate, so keep that in mind here. Now, behind the second row seat, you're looking at right on 26.5 cubic feet of room, which, to put that into perspective, is on par with the Honda HR-V, Toyota Corolla Cross, and Volkswagen Taos. It falls just a bit short compared to a Nissan Kicks, but is better than a Subaru Crosstrek and Mazda CX-30. If you're looking for a vehicle that is going to be family-friendly and you are someone who's constantly on the go, you can easily store all your luggage back here with limited issues. I was able to fit all my camera gear today with no problems at all. There's 3 bags of camera gear, a gimbal box, and a tripod. So if you're going on a road trip with the family, I think you can easily store 8, 9, 10 bags of luggage here. Now, even better though, you are going to receive a spare tire beneath the floor mat. So if you do encounter a flat on those road trips or travels, you can fix that and be back on the road. Then with the second row seats folded, and this is going to be the big surprise here if you're not going to be having kids in the second row at all times, you're looking at right on 63 cubic feet, which is very good in this class. I mean, that's near the top in this segment. So if you need a vehicle that is going to be practical but also affordable, that's what the Kia Seltos is going to be at its best for the overall package this vehicle is offering. As we take a look at the exterior for the 2026 Kia Seltos EX, this is going to be a carryover from 2025. So no major changes here aesthetically for the exterior or interior, but that's not a bad thing at all, although this vehicle is beginning to show its age here. But up front, you are going to receive LED daytime running lights, but halogen headlamps and halogen fog lights. But making up for that, though, is that you're not going to have a lot of plastic cladding here for the front fascia, or even the side profile or the rear fascia as well. You're going to have the brushed aluminum accents outlining that gloss black grille. Really great to see there. And those brushed aluminum accents also make their way for the lower portion of the front bumper, giving you a sportier appearance to this vehicle. This is one of the better looking subcompacts under 30 grand. It also looks somewhat upscale here, aside from those headlights. Then as you make your way over to the side profile, you are going to have 17-inch alloy wheels. But our model has the optional gloss black wheels through the sunroof package. So that way, if you want some extra sunlight for that interior and also the outside air making its way into the cabin, that is available to you for this trim. Now, with 17-inch alloy wheels, especially for a trim that's near the top in the lineup, they're going to be very comfortable, and road noise should be kept to a reasonable minimum here. I think you're going to be very surprised when it comes to that on-road driving experience. Now, with the EX, you are going to have body color match side mirror caps with turn signal indicators to go along with blind spot detection for added safety. Then to remind you that the EX is far from being a base trim, you are going to have those roof rails here for a nice classy touch. Then as you make your way around to the back, it's going to be that light bar that runs the length of the rear fascia that will most likely draw your attention the most. Very typical in the Kia product line right now in the 2020s. But for me, it's the smaller details. It's the contrasting accents that make their way for the seat pillar, also the gloss black trim for that rear window. And then as you make your way down towards the lower profile of the rear fascia, you have gloss black trim and once again the brushed aluminum accents. Really cool to see here. Yes, there are some plastic materials here on the sides, but I'm glad to see that Kia didn't really make this vehicle look too cheap, considering it is under $30,000. So if you're looking for a cool looking subcompact that's not going to break the bank, but also still looks somewhat upscale, fun, in my opinion, at least in this configuration, sporty, you're going to find that here with the Seltos EX. Hopping inside the Kia Seltos EX for 2026, you're greeted by heated Syntec seats for both the driver and passenger, with the driver's side having power adjustability, whereas the passenger will have to manually find their ideal seating position, which is a very common setup in this market. It's very rare to find power adjustability for both sides under $30,000. Now, some of you might be taking notes here on these seats that yes, the bolstering is not going to be overly aggressive. So when you are in those corners on a winding back road, you will be swaying around here in this model. Now, when it comes to comfort though, I think the Seltos does a really good job here. It feels somewhat luxury-like for a subcompact crossover at around 30 grand. So if you're looking for a comfortable daily driver, the Seltos will deliver in that regard. Now, for the rest of the interior though, you're going to have an analog layout with buttons and dials for your climate control, also of course your AC, front and rear defrosters, fan speed and fan direction. There'll also be quick access icons which will get you different menus efficiently for your infotainment system. So a nice analog and tactile experience here. But one thing I really love though is that this technology still looks pretty good in the middle 2020s. Sure, Kia is doing some really good stuff with their newer head units and newer digital gauge clusters, but I have to say, if you're looking for an older model or older generation, the Kia Seltos will surprise in more ways than one. On your steering wheel, there will be buttons on the right side which will help you control the information that is displayed on your digital gauge cluster. And before we dive into that, you are going to have different drive modes for normal, sport, and smart, and each one has its own design. So I like that interactiveness here. Now, from this display, you can access your turn-by-turn navigation, your tire pressure monitoring system, your torque distribution, then of course your fuel economy statistics and digital speedometer. I like the fact this screen is going to be customizable, that it is somewhat in depth. Yes, Kia has trimmed down on this in their newer models, but for the Seltos though, it is rather refreshing to see in the 2020s. Now, as you make your way over to the infotainment system, you are going to have Apple CarPlay and Android Auto compatibility, but also onboard navigation. That is right. For a trim under the SX to get onboard navigation, you're going to find this on the S as well. That's pretty big. Some of you are looking for onboard navigation and you don't want to use Google Maps or Waze, which I fully understand. Now, on this screen, you're going to have all your widgets in place here, well within arm's reach for your phone, your voice memo, climate, valet mode, quiet mode. This is all stuff that you would have found on older Kia products a couple of years ago. I still think that this screen is very easy to use. It's very responsive, no lagging here. Kind of reminds me, and this is in a very trimmed down way, of what you found in older luxury vehicles around 2020, especially from Audi and BMW with the iDrive system and with Audi's MMI user interface. You can kind of see some of the inspiration that was carried over to this generation when Audi and BMW executives took over the Hyundai Kia brand. grand, and this is actually a really nice head unit to use, especially in this market right now. Now, when you do place the Seltos in reverse with the EX, you are going to have a rear backup camera with trajectory, also rear parking sensors as well. And this screen does provide a good amount of resolution, so a lot of safety here when you are backing out of tight spots or in a parking garage. Then as you continue on, you're going to have those buttons once again and those physical dials of the volume and tuning. Love to see this. I think a lot of you are going to find this very refreshing to see in 2025. Beneath that will be a wireless phone charging pad to go along with the USB-C and USB-A outlet and 12-volt outlet. There'll also be another cubby for an additional smartphone or wallet. For the center console itself, you're going to have your traditional gear shifter here, your drive mode selector, your park assist button, then also hill descent control, and then you will have your buttons for your 3-level heated seats. So everything is within arm's reach, and I like the fact it has a tactile layout to it. You have 2 cup holders here. Then for the standard storage compartment, it's deep enough for a wallet or smartphone, and pretty standard for a vehicle in this market. And then to round out the front seating area, we have that optional moonroof, which brings in a lot of natural light to the interior. Then for passengers in the second row, the practicality continues here as we checked out with that cargo area. You're looking at right on 38 inches of legroom, which is very respectable in this market. That would be on par with some smaller compact crossovers at around $35,000. Now, this is very far off what you are going to find from that Kia Sportage, but that's okay though. You're looking at buying a vehicle under 30 grand that's going to be practical and flexible, and the Seltos will deliver in that way. On top of all of this, you are going to have the ability to squeeze in a third person in the center, and a lot of subcompacts will not offer that, such as that Mazda CX-30 or Subaru Crosstrek. So if you're looking for a family-friendly subcompact that's also affordable, the Kia Seltos will deliver on those demands. On top of that, with the Syntex upholstery, it is rather comfortable here as well. Now, when it comes to headroom though, you have a lower roofline, so tall passengers might be hitting their head on the headliner, so keep that in mind. You are going to have 2 center-mounted air vents to go along with 2 USB-C inputs. And then to round out the second row seating area, you are going to receive a center armrest with 2 cup holders. Ultimately, the 2026 Kia Seltos is a very well-rounded subcompact crossover. But there's one issue. It's this engine. The 2-liter 4-cylinder for the Seltos just isn't giving this vehicle enough. 147 horsepower, 132 pound-feet of torque with the IVT. It's not just this vehicle is underpowered, it's that it can't get out of its own way. It feels very slow and lethargic when you do get on throttle. You're forced to go with the SX to get the 1.6. And I think with the Turbo 4, this vehicle I think is a better daily driver than what we have here for this trim. But with that being said, I really do like the Seltos' on-road driving characteristics and mannerisms. It feels really nice on the roadways. It glides over the bumps and imperfections. It's also relatively quiet too. On top of this, the Seltos does not feel like a traditional subcompact crossover. We talked about that with the exterior dimensions and also the interior space. But that also translates to the seat positioning as well. You sit very high up in the Kia Seltos for a crossover under $30,000 that's not wearing the Sportage badge. This gives you a lot of visibility, maybe even helps out with that safety aspect. So you have a nice commanding feel and presence over the roadways, nice panoramic view. A-pillars are not too aggressive, so I don't think you'll have any problems when you are approaching intersections or red lights. Taking a look at your side mirrors, they're decently sized, they're okay for what they are. You have blind spot detection, but I have seen bigger in this market. And then looking out back with the headrests in the way, I can see what's directly behind me. So a good amount of visibility here, but I think a lot of you are going to be looking for that ground clearance and just having that capability where you can go through some deep snow and maybe even some harsher winters. And I think the Kia Seltos can do that with the all-wheel drive system. Now, for day-to-day driving though, I think a lot of you are going to like the fact that the Seltos does feel rather comfortable. That's one of the strong suits for this vehicle in regard to the on-road driving dynamics. Yes, it's not going to be sporty, it's not going to be fun in that way. But if you're looking for a refined subcompact crossover, the Kia Seltos is one of the better options out there right now. I will say though that the IVT does do an okay job of simulating the gear shift, so it's not going to have that droning, at least when you are cruising around the city and suburbs. But best of all though, for a vehicle in this market, you do have a sport mode. Now, sport mode's interesting here with the Seltos because, for one, the throttle response gets far too aggressive in my opinion, but also the steering input becomes very weighted, almost comically weighted for a subcompact crossover like this that doesn't have a turbocharged 4-cylinder engine or a sports-tuned suspension. But it is kind of refreshing, I have to say, because so many manufacturers in this market just give you a subcompact that's fuel efficient, that's practical, that's affordable. At least with the Kia Seltos, there's some playfulness here, despite the fact it does feel somewhat top-heavy. Unlike most of its competitors, its demeanor is more reflective of a compact crossover, which is why when you consider the fact that this particular trim comes in at around $28,000, just above that with the all-wheel drive system, you're getting a vehicle that feels somewhat upscale, that's also more than practical for a growing family, and you're not spending over 30 grand. Now, albeit, there's some weaknesses here to this vehicle, and you see this all the time in the subcompact crossover market, where you're either going to get a crossover that is very practical, but doesn't have the best performance or best engine. Then you have other vehicles that are small but fun to drive. And I think with the Kia Seltos, this is one of those options out there that is on par with a Honda HR-V, Toyota Corolla Cross. In a way, with this engine, drives very similarly to those two vehicles. It's just that when you're comparing this to, say, a Mazda CX-30, maybe even a Volkswagen Taos, this is not going to be a great one-on-one comparison if we're looking at it from a performance perspective. But everything else, though, I think Kia has nailed here with the Seltos. In the corners, it does feel quite nice, especially at lower speeds. Once you start getting to around 35, 40 miles an hour, you're going to start feeling that body roll. So there is somewhat of a disconnectivity to the roadways here. But again, what the Kia Seltos is exhibiting is going to be a crossover that's all about that practicality and, more importantly, that affordability. And for good measure, let's get on the highway here before we wrap up this review. Now, to get this vehicle moving, you have to get very deep into the throttle. But at around 45 miles an hour, handling this on-ramp pretty well. And we have safely merged onto the highway. And at highway speeds at around 65 miles an hour, road noise really isn't that bad. Again, there is a sense of refinement and quality here to this crossover that I find rather refreshing. But as I've said probably numerous times today, it just comes back to this engine. Which is why when you get this close to $30,000, I would say just go with the SX. Because the SX gets all-wheel drive standard. You're just spending an additional $3,000 to $4,000, but I think it's totally worth it to get a more enjoyable crossover overall. But there is a nice composure here on the roadways for the Seltos, so I still think it's a good subcompact crossover, even though it is in some ways starting to show its age, and we are going to need to see a new generation make its way into the lineup very soon. So all in all, after this very quick test drive with the Kia Seltos, it's a very good crossover. It's just that in some ways, it might disappoint, mostly with the performance. This 2-liter 4-cylinder leaves a lot more to be desired. But if you can look past the performance, and you're just looking for a family-friendly subcompact crossover, the Seltos is one of those vehicles that does that better than most of its rivals. It has a good tech package, a good amount of interior comfort, also physical buttons and dials. It's a nice happy medium in the middle 2020s. And I think if you're looking for a vehicle that's larger than, say, a Subaru Crosstrek or Mazda CX-30, you might find yourself pretty happy here with the Kia Seltos for 2026. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this quick review for the 2026 Kia Seltos EX. If you did, please like, comment, share, and subscribe for more. And I will see you guys next time.